All right, so today we're going to talk more about automation, right? And how do we prioritize the things that we're trying to automate in these automation projects? Before we get into the meat of that and some really detailed techniques, I want to lay some foundation. So first of all, I'm going to bet that all of you have been involved in some sort of automation project over the years, likely even right now. Because the reality is that today's companies are automating so that they can stay competitive. It's absolutely that critical to every single company out there. And let's just kick this off. If anybody could just drop into the chat right now, I'm curious, what kinds of things are your teams automating today? Right? What kinds of projects are you working on that are automation related? For example, are you replacing entire systems? Are you automating just a few business processes? Are you working in accounting systems? Are you working in e-commerce systems, back-end systems? So feel free to drop a comment in the chat. I won't call on you. I just want to kind of just see what kinds of things, let other people see what kinds of things you're working on today. And so while you guys are putting some comments in there, across the screen right now, you'll see these are the broad strokes of areas where we're seeing automation. This is really across the entire enterprise. But, you know, in customer experience, we're looking at things like, how do we treat our customers so that they continue to come back to us, right? So putting some technology in place to automate what may have been a clunky experience for them. Employee experience, right? What do we need to do to improve our employees' lives? And it's a competitive job market. We have to do those kinds of things to keep the people with us. Operational efficiency, this is a big one. How do we run systems and processes more efficiently? Can we eliminate redundant systems? Can we eliminate manual processes that cause lots of errors? Sometimes people get really worried about, I'm going to lose my job if we automate that thing. That's not the spirit that we're hearing with companies. It's more about, can we automate the things so we can make the process better and have those people work on higher value tasks? Front office systems. How do we integrate marketing to sales so that sales reps can talk to customers and have the best information available at their fingertips about what that customer's history looks like? Back office systems, right? How do we track inventory to push correct data back to sales systems? How do we make sure we don't have revenue leakage in our accounting processes? And again, these are just examples of the kinds of things that we're seeing out there with our clients, the kinds of problems that they're trying to automate to solve. But let's pop over to the chat for a minute. We have a couple examples. So accounting systems and testing systems. Fantastic, Justin. I love those answers. And then customer ordering systems. So between two different business units. And so I can imagine, Alicia, that could look like you're trying to, either you have two totally different ordering systems. So I've seen that in a lot of companies, particularly if you have something like an online ordering system. And maybe you have an offline ordering system. We work with one client that has multiple e-commerce systems in place, believe it or not. And so how do you integrate those and push them into the same source on the back end? So lots of interesting things there. Yes, fantastic. Thank you, Alicia, for clarifying. So in her case, right, it looks like you've got the customer's viewpoint of how we're ordering, and then there's something from an internal side and what we're doing. And how do you marry those up, right? And typically, by the way, the complexity in that lies in the data behind it, if I had to speculate. So, all right. So many companies are doing automation, but what we find is that almost all companies, while they are doing automation projects, many are struggling to actually complete those successfully. The data I'm showing here is from a study. It's a couple of years old now. You will find lots of different studies out here that paint a similar picture. The idea here in this one, though, is that 84% of companies are invested in this digital transformation. Only 3% claim that they've actually completed this fully. So very, very small percent, which means there's a lot of automation to still happen out there. A lot of transformation that companies are still going through and will continue to, because even once they've done it, they're going to continue to need to upgrade that, right? Somewhere in the middle of all of this is probably a measure of success of actual individual automation projects. I find that they may complete them. Most will not do it on time or on budget, or they won't deliver the full value that's needed. And the risk in that is that the system doesn't actually get adopted, right? So then you have software out there that's either frustrating people or simply just not used. So when we look at why is this happening? we see customers that are typically looking at automation projects from two different directions. One perspective is really where it's led by an IT team. And they're typically, in that case, they're focused on data or architecture needs that they're trying to solve for. The other perspective of automation is one that is more focused on the business process. So trying to eliminate errors, or people redundancies, potentially, again, moving people to higher value tasks. In any case, the lack of alignment between these two is what leads to many of your challenges out there. So let's dig a little deeper into that. From the IT side, we see there's a lot of complexity that leads to technical debt or failed projects because we're building the wrong thing. We're building a thing that the business actually won't use. So we think we're helping them by automating something, but maybe we're actually harming them in their day-to-day lives. Whereas on the business side, what can happen is you get a project delivery gap because basically, like, the business doesn't necessarily understand what are all the complexities that underlie what they're doing in the business process around the data, for example. And so, they don't get what they need. It takes longer than expected, and they ultimately end up losing faith in their technology team. So both are really bad places to be. And we've seen failure after failure on this. You can read articles about this all over the place, and there's lots of reasons. The good news is with some preventative measures, we can actually get ahead of this and deliver successful projects. If you're inclined, while I keep going here, drop in the chat again a little bit about, like, why are your projects struggling? If any of this resonates for you, feel free to grab steal a bullet point if you want. But first, so many companies, what we see them doing is trying to automate everything all at once. So we work with one large enterprise that is replacing a legacy leasing automation platform. And while that program has spanned multiple years, and I'm not going to say everything's been rosy, because when you're talking about a program that large, it's hard to be perfect. But over those years, the one thing I will say that I love that they're doing is they're actually deploying software. So that is the opposite of a big bang approach, right? So what we're doing is working with them to help prioritize the rollout of the things that they're automating. And in some cases, that's doing it by region. Sometimes it's prioritizing slices of functionality. On the other hand, a competitor of theirs is deploying the exact same leasing platform, and they started this program about 1 year behind the other company, but they don't have any working software deployed yet. Because what they're trying to do is do it all at once. And we're talking probably a 3 to 5 year effort to get there. So you have 3 to 5 years that you're working on something and actually not getting value out of it. In their particular case, they think they have to automate everything before they deploy it. That's kind of the big hang up there with that big bang approach. The next one is, if a program is business driven, the business, we find, thinks about processes and not necessarily much else. So if it's technology team driven, right, they're thinking about data and systems. And the reality is, you've got to look at this from all of those perspectives. So this isn't about being right or wrong. It's about everybody was actually right. We need to look at it from the process and the data and what are the systems that need to be integrating. We have to look at it from all those perspectives. And I'm going to talk a lot more about this here in a couple of slides. The third thing is that stakeholders often get hung up on making sure the software fits what they do today, right? So they have a business process today, maybe they have some software in place today, and they need to replicate that. That's the mental attitude we see often happen. But sometimes that's actually not necessary. Sometimes you can modify your business process in a way that will make implementing your business rules or your new software much, much more simple. So the idea is align your business processes to the out-of-the-box software capabilities as best you can. Much, much more likely to be successful in deploying some kind of automation if we have to customize it less. Kind of makes intuitive sense, right? And then the fourth one is that there's often misalignment on what the actual goal is. In almost all cases, we see that teams just aren't aligned on kind of a common goal. So the business wants one thing, technology teams want another. And even within those two teams, you may have disagreements.